Hi, my name is Jamie Kwong. I'm a fellow in the Nuclear Policy Program at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. So I kind of work in a few different areas. So first and foremost, my PhD, which was kind of my foray into the field, looks at public opinion of nuclear weapons issues. And I specifically examined US public attitudes towards North Korea's nuclear program, and I've kind of expanded that work to look at public attitudes towards proliferation issues more broadly. Secondarily, I'm also working on a project that's looking at the intersection of climate change and nuclear issues. So I'm specifically trying to examine what threats climate change might pose to US nuclear weapons and kind of consider what that means for, deterrence more broadly. And then third, kind of the biggest area that I work in is multilateral nuclear regimes. So working a lot at the Non-Proliferation Treaty, so the NPT in the jargon that we use so often, and kind of how, nuclear weapon states and non-nuclear weapon states interact and are eventually working towards, this global disarmament and what that means in the short term in terms of reducing the risks of nuclear weapons use and arms control and the like. That's kind of tough. I think I could talk about these issues forever, and I make a lot of my friends not in the nuclear field listen to it anyway. But I think it would be important, in a high school or, college course setting to kind of talk about public opinion of nuclear issues. I think it's an important way to explore how folks in the classroom think about these issues and might engage with these issues in their everyday life or more broadly, and then think about how that might track on to, the broader population, both within their country and amongst other countries, and kind of see where these attitudes overlap and don't, and kind of examine why, and think about, what does this mean in terms of nuclear policy at, a government level, and how can opinion impact those policies and vice versa. Yeah, no, I'd be happy to chat with people from all levels, backgrounds, ages, that sort of thing. I think it's important really to engage with folks early and often. I think we need a lot of new energy in the nuclear weapons space, and so it's important to speak with those that might have an interest very early on. So I became interested in kind of the nuclear weapons field through a set of really good teachers. So I was studying at the University of Southern California as an undergrad student and did a summer course here in Washington, D.C., where, we had a professor from USC who kind of made DC our classroom. And so rather than sitting in a room, we went around to different think tanks, to different government buildings, to different private sector buildings, and spoke with people that really work in this space and got exposed to a lot of different positions, perspectives, issue areas that really kind of got me hooked on this field, and I've been pursuing it ever since. So I think it looks really different for a lot of people in the field. So mine started perhaps fairly typically in the sense, I had some good internships in Washington, D.C., but more importantly, I had some really great mentors. They really pushed me to kind of grow in these different interest areas that I was pursuing. And then I went on to pursue a PhD in war studies at King's College London, which kind of set me on a more formal trajectory towards entering the nuclear policy space. And importantly, I was able to do a lot of policy relevant projects alongside my PhD, which again kind of exposed me to the community outside of academia. And I think it's really important to kind of have that bridge between the two. From there, I was able to kind of realize that I wanted to work specifically on the policy side of things, less so on the academic side. And so I pursued a pre-doctoral fellowship here at Carnegie and was lucky enough to stay on after the PhD. Yeah, so I think nuclear weapons issues are all too salient and relevant of an issue for the public. Anything from the vast potential consequences to the fact that I think we need more public engagement in this space. And as I said, I think it's really important to get young people involved, bring new energy, kind of infuse innovative ideas and more perspectives into these issues that have kind of challenged folks since the dawn of the nuclear age. So I think it's really important for young people, especially, to start thinking about these issues and get a sense of how they might be able to contribute to this space. Well, there's a few, unfortunately. But I think kind of at the top of my thinking right now are potential proliferation concerns, right? So the idea that more states might seek to acquire nuclear weapons, develop nuclear weapons, or even work up to the point where they could and use that as a sort of leverage in the international chessboard that is geopolitics. And so, we see some states perhaps seeing an increasing need or perception of a need for nuclear weapons for their security. And we've seen that in the last few decades play out in North Korea. We're seeing potentially that shift in South Korea, partly in response to North Korea, in places like Saudi Arabia. And so, that in turn would have a lot of spillover implications into a lot of other places within the nuclear space. So the non-proliferation treaty regime being one of the key aspects. So I think that's definitely a concern to be thinking about, and how can we prevent this proliferation, demonstrate that you don't need nuclear weapons to have ultimate security, and how states can work together to really be working to reduce the global nuclear arsenal.